Hey, folks, thanks for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Grab yourself a coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation, whatever grooves your move. And today, I have a great guest. He's a guy I've known for a few years, fellow Marine. Happy birthday on the 10th, brother, and a fellow veteran, served active duty Marine. And just an all around great guy. He also had a profession at a point in what everybody used to watch on TV and fantasize on the world's most dangerous catch. Well, he actually did that stuff and a lot more. And I'll let him introduce himself because I'm sure you all know who Holland is. And, brother, it's your show. Run with it, baby.
Well, thanks, Kaiser. And happy birthday to you. Happy 245th to the Marine Corps. The proudest thing I've done in my life. My name is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. I'm a filmmaker, former Marine grunt. I'm the rifle squad leader. And I worked on an expose documentary on the Oklahoma City bombing titled A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. I'm from Oklahoma. I grew up in Oklahoma City, and I was actually in the Marine Corps going to the School of Infantry when the building was blown up. So I was unable to really concentrate on the issue for a number of years because my Marine Corps career and deployments overseas kept me busy. Several years later, I got into filmmaking, and I was already working with people who were investigating the anomalous aspects of the bombing that were contrary to the official story. And I was writer and producer, co-producer and co-writer on the documentary. And if you want to check it out, just look it up on YouTube. It is on Amazon Prime, but there is no need to find it there or to pay for it. There are versions on YouTube. It's 2 hours long. Go on YouTube and search for A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City. You'll be able to find it. There's always versions up there. It gets yanked from time to time because of issues it talks about, but there's always usually one or two versions online, and I advise people to go to YouTube to find that. And that's A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995. Just search it, you'll be able to find it. So, and also, yes, I've also been I spent about 2 years off and on going on a shrimp boat in the Gulf of Mexico, shrimping across the Gulf of Mexico, working on a documentary about the commercial shrimping industry, which is a very interesting topic because it's a dying industry. And I was aboard the fishing vessel Defiance with my very good friend, best friend in fact, Captain Kyle, who's a third generation shrimper. His father is still alive. He's been shrimping since the 50s, although he just captains a desk now at the docks. And so I've been able to get interviews with them and just chronicle the history of the shrimping industry in the Gulf of Mexico and the effect it has on the environment, on the local industry, on the culture of the Texas and Gulf Coast. So that's been very interesting. I'm also working on a documentary. These are all in the works right now, about a blues musician named Watermelon Slim, who's also resided in Oklahoma. That's how I got to know him. He's the winner of 17 WC Handy Awards, which are basically the Grammys of blues music. So we're working on a biopic of him. But lately, I've been going on various podcasts and interviews. I've been interviewed several times on the Alex Jones show, not only about the Oklahoma City bombing, but about current events as they pop up from time to time. And I made the acquaintance of Kaiser several years ago when he contacted me, as you know, Kaiser, about some information that he had that would help me and my investigative partner out, Dr. Wendy Painting. And we've been keeping in contact since, and I'm very glad to be on this show.
Thanks, brother. I'm glad for the shout out. Now, folks out there, do not worry about the background noise where he is located right now. There is a storm going on. So I need you to have some understanding on this. Just realize it's going to be the reality of this. And normally it wouldn't happen. So I will say this. It's been a pleasure to know this Marine. He's an honest broker. I just saw where a brother of mine who I interviewed a little bit ago, and we're going to talk about the OKC thing, but I have to let you know that a former guy who worked for an agency I worked for said now JSOC's in and Biden is going to get charged. So that's an interesting twist to what we were talking about earlier. So we'll end up with that one. I don't know the full context of that, but I will explain. You know, he was a guest on my program also. So why don't we run through the OKC anomalies that both you and I both saw, and we can just go from there, brother. And you know what I'm talking about. All right, man?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I was eating chow in the School of Infantry when I looked up at the TV and saw the headlines on the news that the federal building in Oklahoma City had been bombed. So obviously it hit home. Oklahoma City is my hometown, and I kept up with what was going on. And although Oklahoma City, the bombing has faded from obviously importance in people's minds because many things have happened between here and there, I mean, 25 years. The anomalies came out almost instantly, mainly revolving around John Doe number 2, the accomplice to Tim McVeigh, who was spotted by almost everyone who saw McVeigh in and around Oklahoma City and prior during the planning stages. This mysterious individual, whom composite sketches were made, and some positive IDs made on suspects who may or may not have been talked to, or may or may not have been protected by the FBI because they were informants. And also, so there was news of accomplices that actually the government was running with right away, but then as the official story came down from Washington, it was decided that John Doe number 2 did not exist. He vanished from the investigatory record, and the FBI decided to call off all efforts to find out who this person was and implicate him in the crime. Secondly, there were anomalous things with the damage to the building itself. Some people who were around those days may recall Air Force General Fenton K. Parton, who was former head of the Air Force Armaments Laboratory at Eglin Air Force Base. His job was to blow things up with the U.S. Air Force. He was one of the developers of the Smart Bomb, of the Bomar missile system, and many other. I mean, he was, leading the way for 30 years of explosive destructive research on behalf of the U.S. Air Force. And he conducted an analysis, and he concluded that the only way that the damage to that building could have occurred was if there were explosives attached to key concrete columns within the building. I worked in a military occupational specialty 0351 anti-armor assault, one of my infantry MOSs that dealt in explosives. I chose that MOS so I could learn about explosives after the bombing, because I wanted to know what was going on. And 0351 worked with C4 and dynamite, so I chose that MOS. So I learned a little bit. I'm not a combat engineer by any means, but I learned the basics of combat demolitions and explosives, just so I could figure out what happened with Oklahoma City. One of the reasons, plus, blowing stuff up was fun. So, and when you look at the damage to the bombing and where the truck is parked outside, it is anomalous to the damage inside the building. The crater does not make any sense. It is actually a minuscule crater, not the huge hole that's depicted in the mainstream news, and it is off to the major damage in the building. And reports throughout the day are finding further explosives and evacuating them from the building, halting to pull out these explosives. And one thing I can say that's not in the film, because this person did not want to come, his exact words were, "I got a family, man." But he was on the Oklahoma City Fire Department's rescue squad They're specially trained team for high-risk rescues in its environments. His team was the first group of rescuers in the parking garage. When they got in there, he said that there was C4 still strapped to the columns with the deck cord hanging off. Now, there's not just one report of C4 being found attached in the building. I have an affidavit, or actually we took an affidavit, a deposition also, from another rescue worker who was a medic on the Oklahoma County SWAT team. He responded to the bombing. He said there wasn't much of a rescue. It was just pulling out dead bodies, or actually pieces of dead bodies, where he was. But that evening of the bombing, as he was sitting on the curb taking a break, eating a sandwich from the roach coach, he overheard two ATF agents who were sitting next to him discussing the fact that they had swathed the interior columns of the building. Tests for explosive residue, and it had come positive for C4, which is military-grade plastic explosive. If you watch the documentary, you can see how these explosives were planted. There's an eyewitness, Jane Graham, an excellent eyewitness. She was president of the employee, and she saw people installing these explosive devices. But at the time, being a total civilian woman, she had no idea what it was. She thought it was bone wire. Actually, it was deck cord. And she described the gray putty, and she picked out one of the accomplices from a police lineup. And that person is identified in the film.
Oh, yeah.
As Andreas.
Keep rolling, brother,
Go ahead.
because you are hitting all the points that made me want to talk with you and Wendy at that time, brother.
She identified a person in a blind lineup. This person was Andreas Strassmeyer, a German national, formerly a member of a German Special Forces unit. He was highly connected personally himself. His father was Secretary of State in Germany, which, as I recall, actually means more like the Secretary of the Interior rather than Foreign Affairs like it does here. Secretary of the State itself, as in the government, which was a high-ranking position in Germany. Andreas Strassmeyer was his son. He was a member of German Special Forces, and for some reason he came to the United States, sponsored by a DEA agent, and suddenly became a neo-Nazi and started infiltrating and hanging out with the the American neo-Nazi white supremacist movement. He enjoyed some popularity within those circles, being an actual German and a member of Special Forces and highly connected. He finally ensconced himself at Elohim City, which is a white supremacist compound in eastern Oklahoma, which I have visited, which was a very hairy affair in and of itself. He became the chief of security there, and convinced those people that, the ATF and the FBI were going to raid them, started training them, arming them up, and was there while Timothy McVeigh was hanging out at Elohim City with members of the Aryan Army bank robbing group, and, rounding people up for this operation in Oklahoma City.
Yep, and one thing I think a lot of people don't realize or think about is Andreas worked for the BND, the Bundesnachrichtendienst, from Germany. And that's their intel / FBI. They work hand in glove with the U.S. intel and also with the FBI. Your thoughts on that?
There are several concrete indicators that Andreas Strassmeyer was an agent of one or more various agencies of one or more countries, perhaps on loan. There is the fact that Colonel Roger Charles, USMC, former ABC producer, delineated from FBI 302 documents the name of an informant, which is blacked out and redacted, but the spaces match the name Andreas Strassmeyer. he has sources himself who had told him that Andreas Strossmayer was indeed an undercover agent. Andreas Strossmayer, by his actions, can be ascertained to be an agent. Immediately after the bombing, although he was never questioned in person, never brought in for questioning, although people all over the country were dragged in to FBI offices on the flimsiest of excuses to ask them if they had any involvement or knew anything about the bombing. Andreas Strossmayer, who had been identified in the lineup, had been named by various people as this is the guy you want to talk to, was never questioned. In fact, evacuated from the United States by GSG-9, which, as I'm sure our people know, is Germany's anti-terrorist unit, their Delta Force, as it were. He was evacuated out of Mexico. He made his way down to Mexico and was escorted from Mexico back to Germany by GSG-9. After that escapade, he went to Northern Ireland and started trying to talk to IRA people using his credibility, his cred, his street cred as the supposed Oklahoma City bomber. He tried to ensconce himself within IRA. The IRA told him to leave the country or he'd wind up, in a sorry state, as it were. They wanted nothing to do with him, not only for his actions that they suspected him and as he's bragging of in Oklahoma City, but they also figured that he was a stooge. So he left Ireland, and guess where the neo-Nazi winds up next? In Israel, on a kibbutz, on a farming colony with an Israeli girlfriend, which is a strange turn of events for a dedicated neo-Nazi terrorist.
Exactly, brother. Here's one of the funniest things in terms of events about that entire thing that you just mentioned with Strossmayer, Andreas, as I like to call him, because he goes by different names. And I even...
That ends now.
Yeah. It was Bundesgrenzschutz 9. That is GSG 9. And that's their border police that are their special forces. A lot of people don't understand this. Even the East Germans did this. It was a thing that to bypass military requirements and limits on how many people could be in the military, they would militarize their police. And so their border patrol became GSG 9. The only aside I have is because of my time during the Cold War. And I posted a picture of
You're the expert on this, I'm not.
Yeah, I posted a pic up of an empty chair. We are now lecturing to an empty chair because I am telling you, folks, him and Wendy were spitting so much truth. I added some details, but I'm not going to talk about it online, nor will Holland, I'm sure. But I sussed it out pretty quickly. And that's the intel side of me. And the EOD side of me, the 55 Delta side, and I did not keep it for a year, so I have no right to wear, nor will I ever wear the as we call it, the crab, the EOD symbol, because we had a riot in a prison system, and I was in the National Guard when I went and got my 55 Delta. I didn't keep it for a year, so I have no right to wear it, nor will I. That's honor. That's integrity. But what I did see was I was in the Gulf War. And the bombing of Riyadh, you saw that was mostly fascia. It took everything out on the outside. And there was the same kind of explosive footprint. And that was a bigger bomb, by the way.
That was a tremendous bomb.
Yes.
Huge bomb, much larger than the one they say was used in Oklahoma City. And that was a flimsy structure. That was not... The Murrah building in Oklahoma City was a concrete reinforced building. It was a fortress designed with bomb damage in mind. It was built in the 70s when the Weather Underground was bombing buildings all over the country.
Yep.
It was a very stout structure. The barracks in Riyadh was a prefab thrown up by, a Saudi contractor. It was not a sturdy structure. And that tremendous bomb that filled up an entire tanker truck in Riyadh merely knocked off the face
Well,
Yet in Oklahoma City, a huge divot. I mean, it tore through almost the entire whole of the building.
yes.
Destroyed.
And I was an iron worker for 5 years, putting myself through college. And what I'll tell you is, I reinforced concrete. I know concrete's weak on shear. That's why you put reinforcements in it. And you also, depending on the structure, and especially a parking garage, you're going to have post-tensioning cables. This is a reality, bruh. And that's pretty resistant to a fascia bomb, where it just blows the face off of it. And it looked more like the Beirut bombing, where the guy ran into the Marine barracks with the vehicle, with purpose, and detonated inside the building. And that is why I reached out to you guys back then and said, this smells in many ways, and we won't get into the other ways, but that is what I was like, you guys are on to it. And I believe I reached out to Alex at that time, Alex Jones. I know you and Wendy did. Honestly, there's just too much that smells on that one, and finish it out, man, because I think you guys are on the mark.
Beirut bombing. I'm glad you brought up the Beirut bombing and how that occurred with the truck actually driving into the building and exploding, because that was the original plan in Oklahoma City. See, this was not a perfect op. In fact, it was kind of an F-up. That truck was supposed to be parked inside the parking garage, where most of the C4 wrapped to the columns. But the fact is, the truck they rented, and I say they because there were two people in the rental office renting the truck, not one, as the FBI says. We've interviewed the people in the in the Ryder truck rental office, and there were two people, was too big to fit inside the parking garage. The truck was too big. They couldn't get it in there, and that's why there were the reports, eyewitness reports, of that truck driving around the building several times, trying to fit in. It tried to get into the parking garage by various angles. It even tried to go to an alley along the side of the building, and finally, they just parked it in front. That truck was supposed to be inside the building so that the anomalous damage to the building could not be discerned after the fact. And if that truck had gone off inside the garage, in that crater inside the parking garage, the anomalous damage to the building would be almost impossible to detect. So it was an F-up. And whatever was in the truck, it was a bomb. It was a powerful bomb, but it seems to have been fueled by acetylene tanks. The cops on the scene, although this is not reported in the official story, I've talked to the Oklahoma City cops, said there were acetylene caps everywhere. It appears it was a gas-enhanced bomb whose only purpose was to destroy the truck itself. But it did not go up inside the parking garage. It went off outside in front of the building and left a small crater that's anomalous to the major damage to the federal building. So for that foul up, we can give thanks.
Well, as I'll say right now, right here, what they would have had if they could have gotten in was a sympathetic, and you know this, working with explosives just like I do, you would have had a sympathetic detonation, and it would have removed any trace evidence, and yet it didn't. And then remember, at that time, this is why we know the FBI aren't honest brokers, nor will they ever be, for other reasons that you and I have spoken about offline. Everything's a cover-up. Everything's political. And these people that think the FBI just became the deep state. The deep state's the SES, Special Executive Service and Special Intelligence Service. That's reality. And I've told people this. These are the people that are bureaucrats, that are running everything all the time. They don't care who the president is. they're going to get their 30 or 40 years in. They're not like an LEO, an agent or an officer in a actual Title VI or Title X agency or Title VII. They're not going to be held to the same accountability as, well, let me rephrase. Yeah, they're not going to be held to that same accountability as the agent or officer in charge of an op. They can always continue on. And we see with our president what happened at a certain point, and I think he was trying to expose some things, and that's why they had to try to sully him. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to stay in the facts of OKC. And the Oklahoma City bombing smelled from the first explosion. And they didn't just dirty McVeigh up and leaving Andreas out of it. That's not what just happened. They also dirtied, and people forget, this was under Bush H.W., George H.W. Bush, the shooting by Lon Horiachi of a gentleman who I met back in the 80s. He wrote for Soldier of Fortune magazines, Randy Weaver. And there used to be a Soldier of Fortune conference, and I was at Pendleton at the time, and I used to go to their 3-gun matches. This is before you were dumping your gun into a trash can and picking a gun up. You had to go down range with all your guns. I competed against this dude, and then I met him later on in life and heard the story and asked him, physically asked him. And him and Sheriff Mack were at that same survival conference. This was Y2K at that time. I think it was like 98, 97.
Hey, keep on running. I'm going to get some more coffee.
Oh, no problem. I was married by that time. I remember everything that happened. They were running with their stories. Legit. Excuse me, I just coughed. Legit stories that meant and actually were real about the abuses of the federal government. And of course, I went into the federal government and found out not only were they right, man, they were so right that I couldn't even believe. And it opened my eyes. Let me rephrase that. It opened my eyes a little bit, but I was like, it's still conspiracy theory, this, that, and the other. But I knew what I knew. I knew what I saw from different angles of things. And it wasn't, honestly, I have to say, it wasn't until 2005 as a contractor that I actually knew what I knew. And I was like, okay, another cover-up. And that was, and I'm not going to talk about that one or the other ones. I actually gave the last one to Glenn Beck, and he decided not to run with it because he couldn't get free people to confirm it. Well, no, it was classified by the FBI. Like I say, I've blown the whistle on a lot of shit, man. If you only knew how much whistleblowing I've done. And it actually boggles my mind that people still trust and believe that it's not, how do I put this? As Hannity says it, it is the 99% that are good officers. The problem is they don't speak up when the bad officers do things in the FBI and also in the IC. The only IC intelligence community people, I believe, DIA. That's it. Mike Rogers shocked me because he's the one who blew the whistle. I thought he was a black hat. I'm going to be very frank. when Trump took office, but he's the one who did the audit and found out that Obama and Biden and everybody else were spying on Trump. And I still believe this. You can differ with me, honestly. Gentlemen can disagree, Holland. But I do believe that he was a white hat, and he knew where the bodies were buried, and that's why they also got rid of Flynn, because Flynn would have found that shit with the quickness. Your thoughts, brother?
Well, General Flynn was an existential threat to the swamp creatures in the IC. General Flynn, as documented by the excellent reporting by award-winning journalist Seymour Hersh, at the beginning of the conflict in Syria, in the opening stages, General Flynn objected by memo to the Obama administration's initiative to arm what was then becoming ISIS. He told them it was a bad idea. These people are not good. But the Obama administration, for various reasons, was dedicated to overthrowing top governments. And when the armaments program started happening, basically the CIA was paying the Turks to supply ISIS through their stocks.
Yep.
Their military stocks. General Flynn, on the back end, paid the Turks to give ISIS all of their World War II gear, the stuff they had in warehouses for 50 years. And that is documented on the ground, especially in the early days of the ISIS insurgency in Syria and Iraq, when all of these guys were running around with STG-44 museum pieces from World War II.
Brother, but there's one thing I'll say. In Iraq, I wish I could tell you, I can tell you, I'm going to say it right now. In Wasat province, Al-Qud, Iraq, Ad Diwania, other places, we found weapons caches, or caches, however people want to say it. It's the same fucking thing. With SDGs, 44s.
Really?
In ammunition form. Because people forget when the Germans lost the war, first off, the Nazis never surrendered. There was no surrender in the Nazis. You never had a surrender person from the Nazi party sign that they surrendered. And that's why they have a weird constitution that we control. We actually control Germany. But the interesting part about it is that those weapons were taken from Germany, and the Ba'ath Party, both in Syria and Iraq, were funded in the beginning by former Nazis, and that's a fact. And you could tell by the caches. You could tell the types of weapons we were pulling out. Dude, they still had East German shit. And I've said this on numerous programs where East German AKs, and by the way, when East Germany fell, their ammunition, I have 4 boxes of their ammunition, made in Germany. Of course, it was East Germany, because they were 7.62 by 39. That ammunition and all that stuff for the AKs, we were supplying that. We were, and I worked in this TAP contract on that time for SAIC and then MPRI. So, I see the fuckery, and that's why I was saying earlier that, things started waking me up in 05, and then we had a cave-in Al-Qud. Al-Qud, and they called it Camp Delta. It was an air base, bro. And that air base, we had a cave-in. Guess what we found? This was the cover-up. And I had pictures for a long time. My bro still has them. I got rid of them because that's what I was trying to out to Glenn Beck. And after I gave it to him and he didn't want to run with it, I was like, whatevs. And so I got rid of the pics. But my bro still has them, and he's unnamed and will never be named. But I can get a hold of those pictures again. And here's the funniest part about that. When they went down there, and we all went down there, we took pictures of where it came from, where the chemicals came from. And dude, they were sarin, they were weapons of mass destruction, quote unquote. I mean, now they consider a hand grenade a weapon of mass destruction, whatevs. But the point is, they were German, American, and British. It was to cover up our involvement with Saddam from his father.
Yeah, they found WMDs, but they were stuff we gave them. They couldn't.
Yes, yeah, they couldn't. And even the yellow cake, bruh. If a lot of people forget this, all you have to do is look at I think it was 300,000 tons. And people research it, and believe me or disbelieve me, but this is after everything was over. Canada took 300,000 tons of yellow cake to destroy from Iraq. That's a fact. That made the New York Times and everything. Go on, brother.
Did they destroy it?
The world will never know. You know what I'm saying,
that was
brother?
A pregnant pause.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Run with it.
General Flynn had sabotaged the armament effort in the beginning stages of the. Actually, this was discovered, and after that, General Flynn was shown the door by the Obama administration.
Yep.
So when President Trump picked him to be the national security advisor, that was a shot across the bow to everyone in the deep state IC that someone who knew exactly where the bodies were buried was coming to be captain of the ship. And They could not allow that. They could not allow that.
Exactly.
They knew where to look, whom to destroy, and who was liable. So they pulled every move they could to remove him from that position, including the FBI, once again, setting him up with an interview, which they lost the original 302 for. Imagine that. They lost the original witness statement.
Imagine
and
that.
Getting him set up on bogus charges, which have been dropped by the Justice Department under Attorney General Barr because they are bogus. For some reason, a federal judge who's still unique precedent, attempting to set precedent in the history of American jurisprudence, the judge is insisting that the charges stay on General Flynn. In that case, is being dragged out as much as possible the entire length of Trump's first term to prevent General Flynn from assuming any level of authority with the government to exercise what he knows to clean up what he knows needs to be cleaned up.
You're exactly correct. And the other thing was, I think that Mike Rogers, to be very clear, out of the NSA, I don't think he liked having to point. We have a phrase back in the day. I worked UMint, whatevs. But the point is, we say the cameras and microphones are always pointing out if it's with the NSA, okay? That means the ELINT, electronic intelligence, and anything else that you have up in the ground, up in the air, satellites, global star, whatevs. That stuff's supposed to be pointed out. Only under Obama did they point those cameras and mics inward to our own nation. And the thing that gets me now, there's confirmation. They're talking about this great reset, and then all of a sudden, the Davos folks are like, oh, we got to pull that video. That was open source. And I really love, although I don't like how he likes Q, because Q is what it is. It wasn't what it started out to be. You know, stick with the plan. Nobody can ever tell me Trump has a plan. Trump runs by the seat of his balls. And
he goes with his gut.
yeah, and I'll tell you another beautiful bastard, and I mean this. Richard Grinnell. I said it when he outed it. When he walked over to the Congress from, being DNI, man, with that briefcase in his hand with all his documents. And now they could have wasted him. They could have done whatever they wanted to do with him. And he walked over, his balls clanked when he walked. I don't give a shit if he's a homosexual. The man has balls that clank. And it shouldn't matter to anybody. I don't give a fuck who people fuck. I know you don't either. But it just retarded that these people think, oh, we think this way, we think that way. No, I think a classical liberal is a libertarian today. And that's my opinion. But run with whatever you were going to say with Flynn and all that stuff, because all I'm hearing is good stuff. Because you see, I will say this. I can say this because I saw a person. Do you remember in California, many years back? I said it on BZ's program one time. It was in Sacramento, and you had two Muslims going around shooting a bunch of people, and then they offed them, right? At the end, the Sacramento sheriff is standing there, and there's this black gentleman, a tall black gentleman. I remember him well, except he didn't have gray hair, and I believe, if memory serves, he's to the left of the sheriff. Well, that's an FBI agent who used to be in Columbus, Ohio. And he covered up two things that I know of that happened in my own fucking state. And I am telling you, the FBI always has these cover-up fucks. And if you think that bra-wearing, according to some, bra-wearing FBI director was bad back in the day, what do we have now? What do we have now?
The job of the FBI, like back in the day under Hoover, but to this day even more so, the primary task of the FBI is to collect political intelligence to protect the political establishment.
Yep.
That is their job. Not to fight interstate crime or to combat this or that. That's all PR. Much of the more salacious crimes that get tipped off to, they do nothing about, because it's political intelligence to protect the establishment. And for example, and I have been passed this word from a Marine Corps colonel who works on these issues, who deals in FBI documents, Colonel Roger Charles, in fact, former ABC producer. He examined the documents that the FBI has public from their investigation of the Hunter Biden laptop. And the FBI assigned the investigative prefix D to the case, which is the lowest possible investigative priority they put on that. They literally shit-canned it. That is what the FBI does. And I hate to say it, I am a loyal American. I swore no to the Constitution.
Hell yeah.
But if there is any agency I hate with more than anything else, it is the FBI. They cover up trafficking, they cover up drugs, they cover up mass crimes, they silence and bully witnesses, they kill innocent people to protect the establishment. I just have no use for the FBI. In my personal opinion, the FBI should be burned down and a new agency formed, just like the old Federal Bureau of Narcotics was burned down in the 70s over drug corruption, and everyone in the agency had to reapply for their job. And the dirty ones didn't even apply. They knew they weren't going to get hired. That's really what needs to happen to the FBI.
Well, I think this. The U.S. Marshal Service, the USMS, because of how it's structured. By the way, except for DOD, this is a fact, and Homeland, now Homeland, because it has immigration and customs in it, and also they put the Coast Guard into it, and Secret Service. As soon as they added ATF to the mix, which has been anti-Second Amendment forever, here's the interesting part, and that was under Bush W. Okay, but they've been pushing to become a part of Department of Justice, and that's why they changed their name to BATFE, explosives, because they have that specialty.
So they're trying to get out of Treasury?
Yeah, oh, they're not in Treasury. They are in Justice since Bush, since the realignment when Homeland happened. Because back in their day, Treasury, and they still have that function, was Secret Service. And because what was their major crimes? Money fraud, you know. And bringing in money was always customs. That's why customs was in Treasury, and immigration was in Justice. But they changed, they realigned it, and they made immigration and customs enforcement and border patrol. It was Coast Guard and Secret Service into Homeland. And then they realigned, and Secret Service was Treasury. And that's because of the nexus. Here's the problem people don't see, is that nexus creates, remember when Jamie Gorelick erected the Gorelick Wall, when she did that shit, here's the problem. You had to go to a supervisor back in their day to talk to somebody from an intel agency or whatever, right? No, with the Gorelick Wall, that's what she did, and it was fraudulent. It was done with purpose under Clinton to hide shit.
That happened because of the Oklahoma City bombing. Gorelick was one of the stage manners for the cover-up.
Exactly. And so then what they did was, now there's a nexus to where you still have to go to a supervisor, by the way, if you want to talk to anybody outside your agency. But because they mixed everything, ATF still is able to look at everything you did with State Department. They're able to look at everything in text, Treasury Enforcement Communication System. And, dude, they can go through your IRS shit at the border, and they do. I worked it. I know what I'm talking about. And you can go to everything, even your gun purchases, if they're opening online, like a machine gun or something. So, or a short-barreled rifle, whatevs. And that's why I don't own any of that shit, is because I know they can see all that bullshit. And as a matter of fact, I don't own any guns. The last guns I had a boating accident. I'm sure you did too. That just happened.
I lost mine in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah, exactly. You were out on a shrimp boat. So that's the whole point of this shit, man. They're trying to make nobody be able to be a free person. And I do believe the Great Reset is real. But do run with what you were saying before, man, because I just had to edify you that you're exactly correct on everything you just hit.
Well, I mean, I was talking about the FBI, and the FBI was the lead department on covering up the Oklahoma City bombing. They were. There are many things that were strange with the FBI. For example, 302 witness statements. I've probably read more 302 witness statements than the typical FBI agents. And, it's still the rule to this day that FBI agents, without special permission, which is rarely granted, are not allowed to record their witness statements. They must take notes, go back to the office, and type up whatever they feel like they heard. They do not record witness statements, so they're thusly fully open to interpretation or manipulation by the agent or the management of the agent. to record whatever statement they want. And there are many FBI 302 statements on the record in the Oklahoma City bombing that are a total variance with what the witnesses that I have talked to themselves said they told the FBI. Because I did not say that. There was no way I said that. I did not say that to that agent, and yet he wrote that down. This is simply written up to perhaps faulty memory, poor note-taking, or perhaps deliberate mismanagement or malfeasance. And it's a sad state of affairs. I don't want it to be that way. But we see time and time again how the FBI during the Trump administration has become an adversarial agency to the office of the president. That is because the office of the president is a threat to the political establishment, and therefore it is the FBI's job to thwart the office of the president because they are protecting the political establishment. Are we still there? Anyways, we see that time and time again. Christopher Wray, McCabe, Comey, all of the directors have deliberately thwarted President Trump, have gone against him, and in some cases have campaigned against him, spied on his campaign, have refused to process or investigate evidence. For example, the Wiener laptop, we don't exactly know what was on there because it disappeared into the confines of the FBI. The Hunter laptop was turned over to the FBI months before it was made public, yet they did nothing with it. The FBI is not performing its legislative function at all. It needs to be reformed, and if reform is impossible, well, it needs to be reformulated.
Or disbanded.
And
disbanded, and that's what I was saying earlier when I said except DOD and Homeland, because of their nexus. Title 6C, which federal law enforcement agents run under, including the FBI. This is a fact. It comes from the Marshals Act. They actually steal from the Marshals to get more legitimacy. And yet the U.S. Marshal Service, and I know many Marshals out there, they're patriots. They understand what's up. Because you know why? Just like you. Just like me. Even though I was an MP in both the Marine Corps and the Army, I was fortunate to be attached to infantry units. And we were basically grunts. We just had an additional function as law enforcement. And military police corps...
You're a grunt with a badge.
Exactly. Or an armband. And the thing is, we're there to enforce the laws of war if there's a problem. And we're there also to enforce good conduct and discipline. And that's nebulous at best. But that's where we had judgment. We had discernment. We were able to take a decision, i.e., we're not going to ruin this dude's career over a slight fuck-up. And now, I'm telling you this for a fact. This is in 2007 and 8, okay? Last time I worked federal LEO. I will tell you this for a fact. When they took that away from us, which they did, you could no longer, you had to do this. If you found this, dude, we had idiots, and I'm not even screwing with you, at the border. If some young kid's coming back from Canada where marijuana was legal, I tried marijuana at 14. It was stupid. It put me to sleep. I wasn't a big fan. Never smoked it again. Whatevs. I'm never going to smoke it again. It just put me to sleep. You know, luckily it didn't happen during this era because motherfuckers would have drawn dicks and shit on my face, insert here into my mouth, and it would have been a fucking meme. Luckily, that didn't happen. Back in the 80s, man, when I tried the marijuana, went to sleep, it was no big deal. I woke up and I went home. And I just missed a good party. It was Holly Cloud's birthday party. I'll never forget. And I never did it after that. And nor will I, because it just, for me, was stupid. But I do use CBD oil and an unpaid for pump, Nature Script CBD heat relief spray, 125 milligrams. I do use that on my knees because my knees are shot from walking up and down mountains and shit, and jumping out of bullshit. But, you know, that's the whole thing, man. I mean, the war on drugs is as ignorant. It's not as ignorant. No, it is more ignorant. Let me rephrase that. I said that clumsily. It's more ignorant than the war on terror. Because the war on terror was nebulous. I mean, Hillary Clinton, her ass, I had to clean that up, what I wanted to say. I wanted to put that C word in there. She caused the slave trades to be opened in Libya, human trafficking. She enjoys that. Enjoyed the human trafficking from Haiti. That's a fact. That's not falsehood.
Yep.
You know, and I watched Barack Obama. This is a fact. In 2009, this really happened, man. I went to DCIS, Defense Criminal Investigation Service. I went to Army CID, Marine CID. I went to AFOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigation. And I went through NIS, which now they call themselves NCIS, you know, Naval Criminal Investigation Service, with the same intel. I accidentally opened the wrong drawer when I was putting training records up. I was a project manager, not a program manager at that point. And I always wondered why my Ugandans never had their passports, but they had their little LOS or LOIs, that's what they're called, where they could go to the PX and all that shit overseas. And my Ugandans didn't have that. And anyways, it wasn't until I got back home that a brother of mine from DCIS, because of the jobs that I worked and people I knew, and worked around and worked with, and folks, you have to understand, working for, I worked for the U.S. Army, I worked for the U.S. Marine Corps, I worked for 3 federal agencies that are legit I worked for. I also worked with State Department, Democracy International, USAID. But see, that's not the same. Working for means you're getting paid directly by them. Working with means you're a contractor, mercenary, whatever you want to call it, a consultant. It matters not the definition, but you're not actually a part of that. You are just ancillary to it. And maybe you're a CI, confidential informant, which I believe David Duke, Richard Spencer, and I believe it with knowledge, and Jason Kastle were. And that's why August 17th, in, 2017 when they did that. Yeah. Charlottesville. Yeah, it was 2017. Yeah. That was a setup to screw Trump, to make him look bad. And they set the narrative. And the media are willing lapdogs. Your thoughts, bro?
Well, yes. I mean, what we saw there was, this torch-led Nazi parade that appeared out of nowhere it just appeared out of nowhere. The stage managed to smear Trump by association with this white supremacist or neo-Nazi sentiment that they ascribe to the alt-right. And it's been an ongoing psychological operation since Trump got into office. Since he declared his run for the presidency, they've been trying to smear him as some kind of white supremacist label in order to delegitimize anything he wants to do and to turn people against him. It's quite obvious. I have no doubt I just saw what was going on down there from the outside. I said, this makes no sense. Where are all these people coming from? Here's the thing, I have dealt with actual legitimate neo-Nazis, okay, who have threatened me. I went to Elohim City, which is a neo-Nazi compound in eastern Oklahoma, to interview a witness there. One of the doors I knocked on in that community, I won't give his name because I'm pretty sure the gentleman was probably deceased now for a number of years. He was old. But he was a convicted bank robber for a neo-Nazi bank robbing gang. And he did not know I was coming. And I knocked on his door, and he opened the door. He was wearing, on his regular day off in the middle of the country, a German uniform from World War II. That was his regular attire. When I got in the car, my guide detected me to Elohim City, who was a resident of the place. Within 2 minutes, he's informed me that Jews are a product of an unholy union between me and Satan. These actual neo-Nazis, these are actual Nazis. I have one of the strangest days of my life, and a separate incident was interviewing another woman who's affiliated with the movement, and in her bedroom she has a portrait of Adolf Hitler, right next to a hand-drawn swastika with a crayon done by her grandchildren. I have dealt with actions before. And to ascribe that label to anyone on the right, merely because they were Republican and conservative, is so. That argument has no water.
I understand it, man.
But it has happened. Go ahead.
I understand it, man. I mean, honestly, the alt-right, here's what it was. And that's why people wanted to look into it back in the day. And when I say people, you and I have talked offline who those people were. What is this? It was just the right wing who didn't want these perpetual wars going on. And that really was what it was. But they got a kick.
Well, the alt-right originally was based upon the Trump MAGA movement.
Yeah.
That was the original alt-right. Then all of a sudden, after Chancellorsville, or Charlottesville, sorry, I mixed up with the Civil War battle, all of a sudden the alt-right is racist. And those who did describe themselves as members of the alt-right had to disavow the label because it had become sullied.
Well,
that was an op, smeared the alt-right label with racism.
Well, here's the thing that I tell people. When I looked into it, here's what I found. And I'll say this openly. I don't care. It's the truth. A lot of people that were all right actually left. And the reason for that is, I was there. I was talking to people, being real, being the real guy, who I am. And I'm looking at things and seeing bizarro world. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense until Charlottesville happened, Seville. And the interesting part to me was these were mostly young dudes, okay? That were MGTOW, whatever you want to call them. Disgruntled people that had been to war and were like, why are we still there? Whatevs. It is what it is. And the interesting part to me, the most interesting part, was I'd say, my first question, do you have black friends? Do you have Hispanic friends? Do you have Indian friends? Do you have this kind of, any friends that are outside of white people? Yeah, of course. And I'd be like, guys, why are you throwing up all the iconography that you throw up? And of course, I had to throw it up too to get accepted by them. And the interesting part was, they were like, nah, we just do that for the lulz. We just do that for this. And to gain attention, or be popular, or whatever. And I'd be like, well, you might want to get back to your reality. And that is the reality of the alt-right. And it started way before Charlottesville. And that is where the memes, trust me, I know who the meme makers were back then. And that's where those memes came from, bruh. And Charlottesville's not... Charlottesville, if you look back in history, in 2016, during the election, Hillary said we need to know about the alt-right. Well, these were computer geeks. Most of them were young. And it's just like when I talked with people that wanted to know things, I said, look,
keep on running the show. I'll be right back.
Oh, no worries, man. I was like, what you're seeing is dudes just pushing against, how I put this, they're pushing against communism, i.e., cultural Marxism, critical race theory, whatever, because they were being discriminated against. I get what they're coming from and why they're saying it and why they did what they did, but they also realized that their methodology was wrong. Some of them. I don't think much now, but I will tell you some of the major propaganda hubs, once the alt-right got a solid name, they became full-on communist. That's fact. Richard Spencer is a prime example. And he's like, socialism is best, David Duke, who do you support? Biden. Kessler just disappeared. And when I was told, oh, they take advantage of these young kids. No, they don't. You know what they did? They're getting a nice paycheck by the FBI to be COINTELPRO. And that's my thought process. Your thoughts, man?
Well, like, for example, in Ellington City, the neo-Nazi compound in eastern Oklahoma, the founder and leader, Richard Millar, in fact, was an FBI informant. We have paper on this, making $400 a month. And a lot of these guys, most of them probably think they're, just double timing the FBI. They think they're Whitey Bulger. They're, feeding them shit while they're getting gold or whatever. Who knows?
Right.
But I asked my informant or my source in Ellington City, and who knew Richard Millar and looked up to him. I said, why, if Millar was a dedicated white nationalist, white supremacist, whatever you want to call it, which he was, why was he working for the FBI? And in this case, my person told me he needed the money. That's all there was to it. There was no way to make money in eastern Oklahoma in the middle of the woods, quite literally. It was $400 a month. Who's going to turn that down? And that's, perhaps one reason why Ellington City was never raided by the FBI, because they were, in fact, the nickname for the place was that city, because so many agencies had informants there reporting on whoever was going through. Elohim City back in the 90s was a nexus point for all kinds of people going through there, and they were all reported upon, including Andreas Strausmeyer and Timothy McVeigh. They were reporting, and people were reporting on them. So
I agree with
perhaps
you.
These people who are taking paychecks think they're double timing the FBI, giving them what they want or what they need. And, if they're over a barrel over some issue and they have no choice but to sign the piece of paper saying that they're a CI, I mean, who knows? I'm not in that position. I don't know what, what is going through their mind or what exactly the nature of the relationship is, because being a CI is a spectrum of cooperation.
You're exactly right, brother. What I'll say is what I believe, because I asked somebody to look into it. That's why I know certain things. And that guy said, "Love you, fuck you. Here's your information." He owed me one, and gave it to me. And so I'm very. That's why when I was talking to people once, I said, "You're not going to have a problem with the alt-right. They're a bunch of computer nerds, honestly." But they made this bugaboo thanks to Hillary. And here's what's so funny. The communist infiltrators of our country have turned this into a bugaboo that they recruit off of. And the problem is the left branded themselves as anti-fascist or ARA, anti-racist action. That's just like Sean Fenn to the IRA. The ARA is the political academic wing of the Antifa, or now BLM. I mean, BLM says they're a Marxist organization. So, folks need to rev up that this is also being funded from outside the U.S. It's not just Soros. Everybody who's on this Soros masturbational fantasy, yeah, he's funding some of it, but I just said, there's a lot of different, I didn't just say it, I said it earlier in the show, there's a lot of funders for this shit. And you just need to rev up that, and also it's CCP. Here's something a lot of people don't know in the West, and in the U.S. in particular, is former Stasi agents, former FDJs. That's the youth wing of the old East Germans. Whenever we fought a war in Angola,
like Merkel.
Yep, Merkel. Yep, FTJ and Stasi. And I bodyguarded her twice. All these people don't understand one thing about her. And, well, she's a physicist, by the way. She's not a dumb woman. I mean, now I think old age is getting to her, whatevs. But the point is, I mean, old age is getting to me too, but I'm a little younger. But the point is they're funding this shit. And folks they just don't want to rev up to the reality that this is not homegrown. And I love the whole thought of homegrown terrorism. Nah, the propaganda is not just from our home. It's from the Communist Chinese Party. That's why you see the tint and the smell of Maoism. I've gotten into arguments with brothers of mine, and they're like, "Oh, it's Marxism," everything about the Antifa. And I'm like, no, their teachers in academia are Marxist, but their people are Maoist, the Antifa. And what that means is they're going to support Black Lives Matter. They're going to support the homosexuals. They're going to support all this shit. But in the end, it's going to be, if you wear glasses, it'll get down to that point. It'll be the long march. And nobody sees that. Your thoughts, brother?
Well, the killing fields. I mean, they're already talking about a purge, re-education camps for the Trumpers. And you're right, this is a long-range infiltration dating back to the 20s and 30s. And the communist rot that infiltrated our government and academia was never rooted out. And it eventually attacks those who tried to expose it, like McCarthy. And it never disappeared. It went underground. It reared its head in the 60s and 70s and went underground again. And now it's rearing its head again on the action sphere, direct action sphere, because this is a creature and partly a product of the Chinese Communist Party, which has always funded and supported so-called black liberation movements and anti-fascist movements in this country. And with the death of communism in the Soviet Union, now we have China. They are the communist node of the world. The Chinese Communist Party is the greatest threat to the globe as we see it today. And those who support and run the Communist Party and benefit from it. And people would need to understand that this is a Chinese Communist Party attack upon America. This is not an attack upon the Chinese. I've been to Hong Kong. I've been to Singapore. I love the Chinese people. They are under oppression. Every morning, every night, I mean, hundreds of millions of Chinese people go to bed praying to an illegal God that someone overthrows the party. And I'm not saying we should go over there and invade China, but we certainly should not acquiesce to their proxies, surrender to their machinations, and we should realize what the threat is and who it's coming from.
Keep rolling, brother, because you're preaching. You need to preach that spoken word, and I'll be right back.
Just like in Taiwan, those people, the remnants of the Chinese Nationalist Army under Chiang Kai-shek, fled to Taiwan, set up a free society, a free prosperous society. When I was in Hong Kong, frankly, before the British turned it over to the communists, which they shouldn't have done, they signed that treaty with the Chinese nationalists, not with the Chinese Communist Party, but the British cucked out and gave it to the communists. Before that happened, I thought Hong Kong, if I had to ever leave the country or live in a different place, I would probably move to Hong Kong. Because it was beautiful, it was prosperous, and it was free. And that is no longer the case. They are oppressing those people. They are restricting free speech. They're restricting political action. And, this COVID virus released in China, served multiple purposes. It squelched the freedom movement in Hong Kong. It has affected Trump's re-election prospects. It's been used as a weapon against the Trump presidency, which the left, its proxies, have jumped on board. China is behind much of the the anti-fracking movement to rob us of energy independence. And I am no fan of the toxic effects of fracking at all. But the fact is, fracking, for the first time in modern history, grants us energy independence, which prevents our entry into foreign wars for energy resources and also affects our independence as a nation, not being reliant upon foreign sources that will dictate our policy. Who is attacking us? Who is attacking our coal? It is the Chinese Communist Party funding certain movements, funding anti-fracking, funding anti-pipeline efforts to prevent energy independence, to destroy our economy. China is not under lockdown, and they are the origin of the virus. They have suffered by far the highest casualties, even though they won't release them, by far the highest death rate, and it is still there, but they are not under complete economic lockdown like certain elements are now preaching we should do again in this country, and they're reinstituting in Europe, much to their lament. I mean, we have governments in this country and in Europe breaking up assemblies who are petitioning for freedom from the lockdown. This is communism. This is a product of communism, and this is from people who are trying to institute communism for corporate globalist reasons.
And that's why we're seeing people wanting to impeach Governor Whitmer and do it the legal way. And I also believe those folks, and it's proven out by facts that came out after the fact, those neo-Nazis or whatever they want to call them, actually, when you look at the videos of some of those dorks saying, oh, we gotta go arrest them, whatevs, right? No, here's what it is. Anarchist flags, communist flags
BLM
behind
banners.
them, BLM banners.
Yet they were portrayed as wing by the mainstream media. They're not right wing.
Exactly.
They're anarchists.
Exactly.
Who are supporting left wing causes.
Yes.
Those so-called Boogaloo Boys, which are, the Boog Boys started out as a meme.
Yep.
And now, all of a sudden, certain government agencies started infiltrating them because they have no screening. It's a non-hierarchical organization. It's a network, so anyone can join and do whatever they want as long as they claim the banner of Boogaloo Boys. Well, that is ripe for infiltration by provocateurs to serve a political purpose, as we saw in Michigan. The Boog Boy group was run by FBI informants, and we'll see how this plays out in court, but that served a political purpose to justify Gretchen's rhetoric and Gretchen's actions on the ground.
Exactly. And I saw this shit happening live in real time, bruh. And it's so much different to see it live in real time. Well, you know this. I mean, fuck, I'm sure you're on a list just for going to City.
I know I'm on a list.
Yeah, of course. But you're, dude.
I'm not afraid to use my real name.
Yeah.
Once you're on the shit list, you don't.
Yeah, and who really gives a fuck? My point is,
I don't.
It breaks my heart that we have a weaponized law enforcement and intelligence agency, and it's proven. Trump proved everything he said about the deep state, about endless wars, and everybody's talking shit about him firing people from DOD. He's firing them because they lied to him in the deep state, the SES. And they're saying, oh, it's all good. We pulled all those troops out. No, the fuck they didn't. They lied to him. 200 people left in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
No, there was more than that. And that's why I know for a fact there was cheating happening. Let's dive in. Well, or no, you dictate this. This is your show, brother, because you are dropping truth bombs like a fucking grenadier, and I love it. And
well,
you just keep going.
We saw what happened in Syria. Trump wanted to destroy ISIS, but he did not want to particularly overthrow the Assad regime because that means having to read nation building and insurgency country, which he did not. And the fact is about Trump, he does not like war. He's a businessman. He wants to do business, not war. And although he loves the military, and he loves military men, and he believes in a strong military, as I do, he does not want to, inflict it into major conflict where there is no discernible means of victory. Just more soldiers, Marines, sailors dying for 20 years in a country for these reasons. Yeah, that's fun a lot of the times, is, whatever, but I mean, it's serving no good. He is withdrawing out of Afghanistan. His recent pick as ambassador to Afghanistan wrote a book advocating total withdrawal from Afghanistan. He is serious about that. He's drawing down troops in Iraq because, frankly, they're not really doing a whole lot there besides providing targets. And he does not like writing letters to the families of dead servicemen. He does not like doing it. He is not a committed warmonger. He does not like Iran. He believes Iran is a threat, which it is. And he's willing to contain Iran, but he's not willing to invade Iran for nebulous reasons. He wants to get rid of the war hawks. Like, for example, John Bolton. John Bolton wrote in his book as one of the major reasons he broke what the Trump administration was. There was an incident where Iran shot down one of our drones. And Bolton argued forcefully for a wave of cruise missile and drone strikes upon Iran to punish them for shooting down our drone. Trump was convinced, okay, we'll do it. So Bolton wrote this in his book. This is from Bolton's own mouth. Bolton went home to change his clothes so he could go back to the White House Situation Room and watch the video game coverage all night of the bombing of Iran. Well, he changed. He went back to the White House, and everyone's gone home. The military people are gone. The Situation Room is closed. It's like, what is going on? So we asked around. Well, after Bolton left, Trump invited the generals in and asked them, how many people is this going to kill? And
Right.
they said approximately 150. And Trump said, no, call it off. It's disproportionate. The fact is, Trump does not enjoy killing people. He does not. He'll do it if they're a threat to Americans, as we see, as he has sent operators in time and time again to rescue our hostages, which Obama never did. But he is not willing to willy-nilly bomb countries for frivolous reasons, as John Bolton desired. Trump is getting rid of the war hawks. And Esper perhaps was the last passer of that, and now he is gone. And he has constituted the DOD, reconstituted with extreme loyalists who are also committed to non-intervention when it is not necessary.
Well, the crazy thing is, a lot of people ask me this. Dude, I make a lot of money when I'm actually employed and doing contracting and doing my work.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, it's insane. Okay? Here's the problem as I see it. I like being unemployed. A lot of people don't understand this. And it's because I hate war. I've seen it. I know what it looks like. I know what it will look like here. You think I want this shit here? That's why I always say in all my programs, the sticky wet masturbational fantasy of these LARPers that think they know what war looks like. No, it's a war at doorbell level, bruh. And they will kill your family. And they think we're afraid of it. Nah, not really, but I don't want to see it in my own fucking country. And none of us should.
Let's talk to any veteran who's had to drag bodies out of the Tigris that have been kneecapped with an electric drill and ask them if they want to see that here. No, they do not. War is terrible.
It's horrid.
It inflicts terrible cost upon the veterans, most of whom have died from suicide than actual combat.
22 a day. Traumatic, 22 a day, brother.
Yeah, stress upon the survivors. And the direct effects themselves are horrible. No one wants to see that here. The veterans don't want to see that here. The only people who want to see that here is the radical leftist direct actionaries who are agitating and trying to start a civil war to achieve their ends. No one wants that here. Civil war is the worst type of war you can fight. Neighbor against neighbor. I mean, if there was a civil war here, it's not even geographic. It's neighborhood against neighborhood. City against city. No one wants that. It will be ugly, terrible, and I don't think it's going to happen. I do not think so.
I don't either, unless the left pushes it.
But I certainly don't want it to.
I don't either, brother. I mean, as veterans, we both know this. We know one thing. It's horrid. Dude, I had to visit mass graves. I tell my son and my wife, I said it on my last show with Kimmy, who's from the ACR, Alternative Current Radio. If you haven't ever listened to it, give it a listen. These people are adamant about things, and a lot of them aren't veterans, but they're patriotic Americans. And the thing is, man, you have a global movement where everybody knows this is not the way. And yet some people think it is the way. And here's my problem is and it's always been a saying with me, even before The Mandalorian, you know, that film, whatevs. I was like, if I lace my boots up, that's an indicator. I would tell my troopies, my Afghans or Iraqis or whoever I was working with. And that means tying my boots. If I put my helmet on, that's another indicator. And because the vest, I'll always wear the vest, but the helmet's the last thing, man. And once the helmet goes on, the heart is gone, because I know shit just got real. And I don't know, man. It is all muff fake, whatevs. I mean, I'm just telling you my thought process. I try to do it as indicators for my boys and girls. There are some girls. I gotta always give a shout out to Michelle Wilmot and the Lioness Project. I think her name now, she goes by, because she got married, Michelle Delasio, an original lioness. She had a purpose and did her purpose and was excellent. She did a book. I'm gonna pimp her book right now. The Lioness of Ramadi, I think it was called. So, the Lioness program was real. There's a lot of programs out there that are real. But the important part is that we understand war is bad. And I don't give a fuck if you're left or right. I'm a political atheist. You probably didn't know that. I don't care who wins or loses, but I don't want to work. I do not want to do what I do for a living. It is a horrid lifestyle. It's a part of the skin trade. It's human trafficking. This is what the skin trade is. Human trafficking, prostitution, and everybody says prostitution is the oldest trade in the book. Nah, the Battle of Kadesh, in the documentary I'm in, where you see me rack a 50 and do some other cool shit, whatevs. It doesn't matter to me. They fuzzed my face because I was working for SAIC at the time. But the funny thing is, man, is even during that time I was starting to wake up. And you just need to wake up to the reality of the bullshit and realize war is not the answer. If you think it is, I feel bad for you, because that means you think, well, no, not you think. You have no sensibility for the suffering of others. Not think. You don't.
Exactly.
You don't.
War is
that.
suffering.
Yes.
War means suffering for a lot of people, not just the soldiers fighting, but even more so the civilians on the ground. And the civil war in this country would mean a collapse of infrastructure. That means people would starve. People would die for lack of medicine. People would die for reasons that they shouldn't die for, frivolous reasons, infections from not having toilet paper, malnutrition that causes diseases they shouldn't get. War is suffering, and no one wants it here, and it should all be our strident efforts to prevent it from happening, because if the Chinese Communist corporate globalist agenda fails to come to fruition, they are going to push for civil war. That's what they want. They want to divide and conquer and make those who have made their agenda inconvenient suffer for their intransience, for their commitment to the Constitution and freedom. And we do not want that. I do not think it's going to come to this country, but we should all strive for that not to happen.
An inconvenient truth. Like you guys said. I mean that. In that book. The biggest thing I got from Wendy and yours book was...
Well, it's Wendy's book. She's the author. I just assisted her in some aspects of writing, researching and editing.
But it was an inconvenient truth. And it really breaks my heart how prescient Why don't you give a shout out to Wendy's book? And I mean that because I'm
Okay.
synopsizing my thought process after reading it all and the footnotes and everything that,
Yes.
we corresponded on.
After 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 A Noble Lie, which was the documentary which me and Wendy were co-writers and co-producers on, she and how Wendy got into this is she's from upstate New York, from the region where Timothy McVeigh grew up, and she was writing her PhD thesis on the Oklahoma City bombing for her doctorate in American Studies. And she basically fleshed that out into a book published by Trying Day. It's entitled Aberration in the Heartland of the Real, The Secret Lies of Timothy McVeigh, by Wendy S. Painting, PhD. Now, it's an excellent book, fleshes out, groves of information that we cannot get into in the 2-hour documentary. And she does, for those veterans out there, she does one of the best examinations of the best examination of Timothy McVeigh's war experience and what he experienced in the first Gulf War with the 1st Infantry Division out of Fort Wayne. And it's an excellent book. You can buy it on Amazon. But there is actually something out there that I'm going to put out there to those veterans and those people who are connected, who are listening. Something that's I've been working with, I've agreed to work with on another collaborator, Richard Booth, who's been doing some current writing on the Oklahoma City bombing. He recently published an article on the missing videotapes in the Oklahoma City bombing. And one thing about the Oklahoma City bombing was that there was ample video coverage of what happened outside the building, but none of that has been released, except for a few grainy shots of the truck driving down the street. Nothing of what happened in front of the building or transpired in front of the building, because it would show accomplices. And this is not speculation. We have documentation from the Secret Service and the FBI from agents who witnessed, who saw the videotape, who says that there was another passenger in the truck.
Yep, and here's
hundreds. Go ahead.
Here's something I want to add to that. This really makes me angry when I think about it. How do I put this? When you just said that, it triggered me, and it triggered me in a good way, a positive way. I always like to have clear pills, or I'll be a clear pill dispensary on this one. The thing that breaks my heart is that everybody forgets Mr. Terry. He was a black police officer who was a hero there. And the way he died. Yeah, Terry Yagi. Right.
Yes, Terry Yagi, we have a segment in the film which, frankly, most people, that's the one thing they bring up is Terry Yagi. He was a police officer. He was the first to respond to the bombing. He witnessed many things that were at variance with the official story, including the fact that when he pulled up 3 minutes after the bombing and started pulling people out, he was a hero that day. He was decorated with the Medal of Honor from the police department.
Right.
He injured himself pulling people out of the building. When he pulled up, he says, there were FBI agents watching what was going on outside. And they weren't from the Oklahoma City office. They were from out of state. And the Oklahoma City office of the FBI was not in the federal building. It was several miles away at 50 Pin Place. And they were there already.
And the ATF rolling before it even detonated.
Yes.
That's
their office in the federal building was empty, yet there was an ATF response team outside already suited up in SWAT gear when the bombing happened. Anyways, Terry Yagi was murdered a year after the bombing, tortured and murdered. And that affected a lot of people. Terry Yagi was a member of the DARE program all over the state. He would travel to classrooms. He was one of the largest police officers on the department. He was a giant, an athlete. And he was just a huge teddy bear. He would let these kids crawl all over him. They really looked up to him, and it really affected them deeply. In fact, I just talked to someone who was a child who knew Yeki just last week. It really affected them deeply and saddened all these kids when they were told that Yeki had killed himself, which he didn't. He was murdered, and the specifics are laid out in the film and in the book.
Oh yeah,
but
he had literature marks on his arms and feet.
He was handcuffed and dragged. His wounds were packed with dirt. He was dispatched. The final kill shot was a bullet that entered the top left of his head and entered lower right jaw. Yet they claim it was suicide. It was ridiculous. They performed no ballistic tests on the weapon. They performed no autopsy on a police officer who's found cut up and dead in the middle of the field. No autopsy. They performed a cursory medical examination, but no full autopsy. It was ridiculous from day one, and the FBI took charge of the investigation. The FBI found the weapon after everyone else couldn't find it, yet they performed no test on it. It was ridiculous. He was murdered. The details are laid out in the film, A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995, which you can find on YouTube.
Yep.
But something I want to put out there to the people who are listening is that hundreds of copies of videotapes were distributed throughout the FBI and related agencies, showing what happened in front of the building. None of these have seen the light of day. There is someone we want to talk to.
Yeah, they won't see
someone who may be listening. There is someone we want to talk to, and there is someone who's out there who's listening who may know someone who knows. There was an FBI agent who attempted to sell a copy of this videotape to a Current Affairs in LA, their studio.
Right.
This sale was stopped. We would like to talk to this person. His identity is not known, but we do know certain identifying factors about him. And this is not secret information. This has recently been published by Richard Booth on the Libertarian Institute's website, an article on the videotapes in the Oklahoma City bombing, soliciting information on who this person may be. He is an FBI agent, or was, probably retired now. He's a Marine Corps veteran. He served from 1982 to 1988. He served in Beirut, Lebanon. He was a sniper. And after the Marine Corps, he was an instructor in Carlos Hathcock's sniper school. This is what we know about him. We do not know his name.
Yep.
If anyone out there perhaps knows someone who knows, and that's a very small circle of people who were former Marines serving as instructors in Carlos Hathcock's sniper school, please contact Kaiser, and he'll contact me, and perhaps we can talk to this person about what was on that videotape, and perhaps if any other tapes exist. So I'm putting it out there now.
That's fine. I used to have, and I still have it, on my Facebook. You've seen it. Truth will out. Truth always outs. And including for me. You know, people want to call bullshit whatevs. I don't care. But the truth always outs. And folks, if you aren't looking for the truth, if you want to live in a dichotomy where all you have to do is believe that it goes back eons, all the way back to and this is the way I always dealt with people. If you want to go back eons, back to the 12th century, whatevs, I'm not really interested, because it takes 3 generations. The fruit never falls far from the tree. And that should be how folks look at things. Because you don't know who's a bastard. I'm a bastard. I don't know about you, Holland. I'm not asking. But the funny thing is,
I'm a bit of a bastard.
You don't know who their father is. Mine is Rocco D'Ascenzo. You know, straight up Sicilian. Don't care. My mother had a good time with him, and me and my twin sister were born. But let's get off that subject. This is something I really want to go on. Now, let's jump forward to Trump. What do you think, with your intel and my intel, what do you think is happening right now? It's really interesting how this is developing at the moment. Your thoughts?
Well, Sidney Powell has said, what is going on with Trump? Well, what's going on with the election? I mean, Powell said today that the servers in Germany were snatched up. She says she doesn't know if it's good guys or bad guys. So we'll see if anything comes of that. I think Trump perhaps is preparing for extra constitutional measures to remove him from office. His realignment of the chain of command in the Department of Defense, now Special Operations Command, answers directly to the Secretary of Defense instead of going through the Joint Chiefs. Vice President Pence, recently took a vacation in Florida, on an island off the coast of Florida. The Echo 4 Bravo Airborne Command Post airplanes are now doing regular circles over bodies of water. The White House just built a second fence, dug up its lawn to either install more or service existing sensors and defenses. I do believe that President Trump is preparing for extra constitutional measures to remove him from office. Now, perhaps Roman Empire-style coup plotting is afoot. I don't want to be alarmist, but this is probably the most pivotal moment in American history. What happens in the next few weeks will determine the future course of this country for bad or good. So we will see. But I do think that it is not just court cases and lawsuits that are playing out, that there are major moves being made by both sides for victory, as they both define it for themselves.
Right.
So we must be prepared for that, and there might be further things coming down the line. We've seen the news media blackout on things that could affect the election. If Trump does become successful in his efforts, we can expect some kind of news media blackout over that. Maybe even a disruption of the services, the internet service providers that provide us information. We will see.
Well, like we saw on election night, where all of a sudden folks, states were called by the AP. This is what they love to do. It's all about the AP. Last I looked on the Constitution, it does not list the AP or any news organization as calling the election. It's once the folks get together in their states and rally and support one or the other candidates. That's the reality. I see what he's doing. I see it clearly. Because I believe, you can disagree with me, honestly, if you think I'm wrong, but I do see something that I'm seeing right now is that I think there's something afoot, and that's my point. Your thoughts?
Well, I think certainly something is definitely afoot. I don't believe that as much as the media and the left and the Democratic Party has invested in illegality and censorship and unconstitutional means, anti-Bill of Rights means, to secure their victory, they've committed too much, too much to suffer defeat. Defeat means imprisonment. Defeat means the destruction of the Democratic Party as an entity because of its criminality. They cannot risk this. They will now not allow a lawsuit to determine their fate. They will not allow a court ruling to determine their fate. If things go in Trump's favor, they're going to get even more desperate to preserve themselves from destruction. So I would be prepared for things to get weird.
Well, it means violence, unfortunately. And,
it could mean blackouts. It could mean news blackout. It could mean failure of communications, failure of media. No way to communicate with what's going on. If the internet goes down, we won't know what's going on down the street, much less what's going on in D.C. Things could get really hairy. China cannot afford a lame duck Trump administration because that will likely mean the destruction of the Chinese Communist Party. Remember that the 2018 executive order that Trump signed on election interference by foreign powers authorizes the Department of Defense to take a lead role in stopping that. And interfering in our election is an act of war.
Yep.
So China cannot suffer a vindictive Trump who knows that they interfered in his reelection. And China's proxies on the left cannot suffer the consequences of going along with this program.
I agree with you totally.
So I'm telling people who are asking me, I don't make predictions, I'm not a prophet, but I would be fully prepared, if you're not already, for things to get really weird, even if Trump prevails.
Well, as Hunter S. Thompson once said, when the going gets weird, the weird get tough. And that's a sad statement on that. Can we put a bookmark on this and actually finish the show? Maybe
let's do that.
Maybe in a week. I think we're gonna need maybe 2 weeks, but it'll probably be a week, I think, when this shit's gonna come to light. I mean, that's crazy shit that neither of us want to see. We're trying to be open and honest, and I just don't see where they're giving any opportunities for open and honesty. And you get the final thoughts, brah. And I will exit us, but your final thoughts are your final thoughts.
Well, for those of you listening who are interested in the Oklahoma City bombing, please check out A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995 on YouTube. It is on Amazon Prime, but don't bother doing that. Don't give Amazon your click. There's no reason to pay for it. Just go find it on YouTube. It's 2 hours long. It remains the definitive documentary exposing the lies behind the official story that they push to push a narrative about the Oklahoma City bombing. Everything in there is 100% backed up. No one has bothered to even threaten to fucking sue us over anything in it, because everything we have documentation of. There was no need to invent or come up with anything. The verifiable evidence was voluminous, and we couldn't even cover it all. Basically, in the film, we just provide the most tantalizing morsels of what is going on. And it is all very easily digestible. So check that out. A Noble Lie, Oklahoma City, 1995 on YouTube. Just do a search, you'll find it. There are a couple trailers on there, but look for the 2-hour documentary. My name is Holland Vandennieuwenhof. If you have any information out there about the Oklahoma City bombing you would like to provide, please contact Kaiser. He will contact me. I can also be reached on Facebook under my real name. And just remember, like I said, that we are living in the most crucial moment in American history thus far. And the following weeks will determine whether this country continues to swirl down the drain of totalitarianism, or whether we achieve perhaps a new era of accountability and freedom in this country, which most of us have long despaired of. And in my mind, in my opinion, President Trump perhaps is the only person who could have given us an opportunity to achieve. So keep an eye out, keep your head on a swivel, and look out for your loved ones, because it's going to get weird.
Exactly, brother. Here's the thing I'll say to everybody. Thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Kastle. I will slowly raise the drawbridge as you exit with your coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation, whatever you choose. This is an open forum. And I'm glad you guys stopped by on this evening. And it's important because Holland has many things to share. And it doesn't stop here. With that being said, Shuff out.